What if I told you there was a city in England, located 50 miles northwest of London, that uses roundabouts for almost every major intersection? This is Milton Keynes, one of the most interestingly designed cities in its country. All you need to do is look down at Milton Keynes on satellite view to gain the knowledge that it has a design like no other. See, the city is home to more than 130 roundabouts, and it didn't even exist in 1950. So today we're going to go over what brought this city to life and why it's designed the way it is. Before that, though, I wanted to quickly ask if you would please consider subscribing to the channel. We make geography content like this every week, so if that's the kind of stuff you enjoy, clicking the subscribe button will mean you won't miss any future uploads, and it'll help me out more than you know. Thank you. So if you're just driving through Milton Keynes by car, it won't look like much of a city at all. The main roads passing through are disconnected from the actual urban zones by dense trees and shrubs. In fact, approximately 25% of the city is parkland or woodland. These divided four-lane main roads are connected almost solely by roundabouts, allowing extreme traffic efficiency and higher speed limits. The city has a very American grid design not seen anywhere else in England. So why is this? Obviously, this is an incredibly unique town, and there's something going on. So to figure out why Milton Keynes is the way it is, we need to go over the history of the town. Starting in 1946 with the passing of the New Towns Act, intended to rebuild communities devastated by the war. See, at this time in history, England was going through a major housing crisis. There simply wasn't enough housing around the country, so the government was forced to step in and create pre-planned communities to hold more residents. One of these communities ended up being Milton Keynes, but it was very different from the rest of the pre-planned areas. Planners decided that earlier new towns had been built all wrong, with low flexibility or space for organic growth. If you were given the ability to design a town from scratch, wouldn't you want to make it as efficient as possible? That's the idea that went into Milton Keynes. So, in 1970, a team of 5 young architects started to design central Milton Keynes, on top of what was then a bean field. This group of 5 architects worked very hard to create the city center that would hold 23,000 parking spots, and work more towards the future than any English city at that time. This was a time where cars had become a major part of everyday life, but they weren't where they are nowadays just yet. So this design of a city, almost entirely suited towards vehicle transport, was a bold strategy. Rather than building a city center around the buildings, this would instead be built around the broad boulevards. Now, so far this may sound terrible to pedestrian-centric urbanists, but the design was actually meant to be relatively pedestrian-friendly. The entire city center was meant to be accessible to the disabled. Underpasses were open rather than dark and scary. Pedestrians were thought of while the city was being designed. Now, Milton Keynes did sound like a utopia, something seen nowhere else in the world. But it didn't go over as well as they had hoped. Housing was not as much of a problem as it was before, so the demand was lower. Their tree-focused design resulted in the entire city looking desolate during a drought in 1976, and great elms started to fall to Dutch elm disease. But even still, in 1979, then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher opened up the Advanced Shopping Center in the middle of the city. A lot of the higher-ups and voices in the country made it very clear that they were not a fan of this idea and this manufactured city. But to the general public, it didn't go terribly. The city center was popular, the city started to grow, and things were going about as good as they could have. The city was originally built to hold 250,000 residents, and that has been passed, with the city creeping up on 300,000 present day. So now that we've went through the history, let's give an overview of the exact design of this city. When it was originally designed, they wanted a grid, but they didn't want the rigid, square grid of major cities like Chicago or San Francisco. They wanted a romantic, British grid, 2 words that should never be used together. So instead of making north-south exact grid design, they made it more wavy and free. It still had every characteristic, but still it was different. The city was divided into districts, or grid squares, with the main roads going throughout the town, only connected by roundabouts. And then the actual city was tucked inside these squares, disconnected from the hustle and bustle of the through traffic. Now, what's the main problem with Milton Keynes? It seems to be looked down on by the rest of the country, and not a lot of people have a positive opinion on the city. And I think there's one thing that I'll hear about more than anything else when talking about the city that caused it to be looked upon this way, and that's the lifelessness. Whenever you're building a pre-planned community like this, finding personality is going to be a problem, especially when you're somewhere like England. Every city is so old and has a long story, and Milton Keynes doesn't. What's unique about the city besides that it has no personality? The city has tried its hardest to create landmarks and turn it into something real, but still it's not looked on as a real British city. Frankly, I don't know how Milton Keynes is supposed to fix this. It really just takes time for the city to form history and start to fit in with the country. But for now, it's just known as the place with a lot of roundabouts. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week. JL, United States Railroad Crossing, by the way, they're a geography intellectual, love them. John DeShirlia, Dark Bird, Obigrad, Elijah Past, Big Pasty, Jeremy Crone, Wolflink73, Snyder Schwein, Florida Jake, Philip Gertz, Tom Mount Wood, Stormy Knight, Nikita Martinoff, Haystack, Benjamin Whiting, Ryan Devins, Hazev the Wolf, Jake Holloway, Dominic Psyche, Rosebud 4, and Bryson. I appreciate you all so much. You genuinely, really help out the channel. If you want to become a member, the link is down in the description below, as well as next to the subscribe button. It really just helps me out as a person, for saving out for college and a new car and stuff, just my future. So if you appreciate the content and want to help me out just as a person, that's the best way to do it. Thank you.